Hello everybody. Alright, I wanted to make a video in English today. I hope you'll forgive the sad state of my hair, the Spartan-like appearance of my room, and the fact that my bed right there is covered by old newspapers and my Latin homework. Okay, people have been talking lately about fluency. What is fluency in a language? Now, personally, I think some good points have been made. For example, Cody's point that language is not that fluency is not a black and white estimation or measurement, but should be some kind of sliding scale. And I share, paradoxically, both the views of Cody that fluency is self-defined and Anthony Lauder's Fluent Checks view that fluency also needs to be subject to outside evaluation to an extent. Basically, I believe that fluency is self-defined, but that someone who wants to be intellectually honest and consistent should seriously take into account outside evaluations of your own proficiency in a language. And that's the word I like, proficiency. I don't like the word fluency because the word fluency is too fluid, if you'll forgive the pun. It's very hard to nail down. It's very hard to define, and it's got a long history. So I prefer to use the word proficiency. I prefer to speak of language proficiency. This is how I evaluate myself, and I think it's a much better term for self-evaluation of how well you're doing in a language. How proficient are you? What is your language proficiency? So what does language proficiency mean in my book? Maybe we should talk. Maybe we should use the plural. Maybe we should talk about language proficiencies. For the purposes of this discussion, let's equate language proficiencies to degrees of language proficiency. I think this is a sliding scale. I don't think you can talk about being proficient, not being proficient. You're proficient to a certain extent. You have differing proficiencies in your language, in your target languages. And how do I measure this? Well, I have certain proficiencies in my native language. I have many proficiencies in my native language. What does this mean? This means that there are a number of things that I can do in the language. For example, I can use the language to talk about my daily life. I can use the language to talk about my past. I can use the language to talk about my future plans. I can use the language to talk about myself. I can use the language to talk about my family. I can use the Spanish to talk about my friends, my interests, my hobbies, my career, my my aspirations and dreams, my passions. I can use it to talk about hypothetical situations in the past, present, and future. Well, if there is such a thing as a hypothetical situation in the present. I can use the language to talk about philosophy. I can use the language to talk about food, cooking, and so on. I can use the language to talk about dancing. I can use the language, etc., etc., etc. Talk about linguistics, technical things, and so on. Okay, so I compare my target language to my native language. How many proficiencies do I have? Do the proficiencies vary? Of course they do. I consider myself bilingual. I call English my other language. I don't call it a foreign language. It's not foreign to me anymore. It's my language. It's a part of my thought process. It's a part of my personality, a part of my life. It's my other language. So English. How proficient am I in English? Can I talk about all the things that I mentioned? Yes. With the same proficiency? No, I'm better when I'm talking about cooking, I'm better in Spanish. When I'm talking about linguistics, I'm better in Spanish because I went to university in Spanish, and that's something that I'm working on. Being able to talk about technical things having to do with my field in English, I need more vocabulary that I don't have, even though I do have a basic vocabulary to talk about linguistics in English, and I have gone into that on previous videos. So what's my goal in language learning? My goal in language learning is to acquire more and more degrees of proficiency, more and more aspects in which I'm proficient in the language, and how good I am at doing these things in the language. I think talking about proficiency, aspects in which you're proficient, areas in which you're proficient, degrees of proficiency, or just using proficiencies in the plural, is a much easier to quantify unit of measurement than fluency, because I mean, how good are you at speaking a language? It's very hard to say. Now, I can say, however, what I can do in the language, and I know that in English as well as in Spanish, I can use the language to establish personal connection, true communication, heart-to-heart communication with a native speaker without filters, without inconveniencing the other person, without boring the other person. I can make a friend for life in English, and that is one of the most important proficiencies for me, the ability to communicate to such a level that you can make an emotional, honest human connection with another person, and have that be a complex relationship, in which communicating is not a chore, it's a pleasure. So, to conclude, I would say maybe it's better to measure your progress in a language, your abilities, by measuring your proficiencies, the areas of your expertise, to the areas in which you can handle yourself with ease in the language. Fluency to me is too much of a fleeting concept, very hard to quantify, very hard to describe, and as such, not a very good tool for measuring your ability in any given language, including your native language. And that to me is the frame of reference. The languages in which I am highly proficient in, my native language, and my other language, English, in which I think my personal assessment is that I am very proficient, because it's close, even though not identical, and in fact I am better at doing certain things in English than I am at doing them in Spanish, and vice versa. I think it's comparable to my native language. That's why I consider that in English I've reached, and I am working on and maintaining and building a relationship with the language. Even now, it's like a marriage, if you want to put it in those terms. And I consider myself to be to have advanced proficiency, to have near native proficiency. Near native. I don't call it a native proficiency because I would have to have a different personal history for that to be true. I think native proficiency entails a lot of experiences that I haven't had, cultural, day-to-day experiences. If I could say that I have native experience, for example, if I could walk into a kitchen in a restaurant, and provided I knew how to cook, I could use English to manage a kitchen, for example. I mean, I know maybe that's a silly thing to say, but what I mean to say is that I don't consider my proficiencies equal in English and Spanish. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I am sure that when and if I move to an English-speaking country, I will have to improve my proficiencies in English in the kitchen. either way, this is my opinion on on the term fluency, why I think it's not very appropriate or useful, and why I prefer the term language proficiency or language proficiencies. It's not a black and white estimation. It's you wouldn't be able to reduce it to a mathematical formula, but I still think it's a much better and clearer way to assess and gauge your progress in a language that you learned or are learning. Either way, that's my thoughts on this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. And by the way, if you haven't checked out my Guess the Language video, please check it out. It's called Guess the Language. You can find it on my channel page, and I hope you'll participate in this Guess the Language contest. See you guys later. Thanks for watching.